Well, multiple Victorian MPs and senators are really worried about what's going on down there because Dan Andrews has probably finally just overstepped the mark. You see, they're required to now have QR codes outside of their homes. Now, that's a crazy headline that seemed ridiculous even in Dan's Socialist Republic, which is, as we know, the king of the nanny state. But it does appear to be the case, thanks to the paternalistic health bureaucrats we've grown to know oh so well over the past year. Residents of units, flats, townhouses, residential apartment buildings reportedly need a QR code system so that all visitors, including family and friends, can actually check in. Now, the logic here is that under the restrictions, these kind of buildings appear to be required to have QR codes for visitors, even if the only shared space of the property is actually a driveway. But even Acting Premier James Molina has admitted, in his sufficiently vague way of course, he's unsure about the technicality.
These are... I wouldn't have thought so if it's a residential. If it's a... I'll come back to you in the detail. In terms of body corporates and residential apartments, I will come back to you.
Yeah, it sounds like he knows what's going on. Anyway, regardless, some body corporates have already moved to introduce QR codes on their properties.
Our advice is that any owner's corporation must have one, and that's for anybody visiting the common property. The advice is conflicting. We're not certain about it, but the regulations say that. We take a very conservative approach because we don't want our owners' corporations being fined for doing the wrong thing, so we do take that best practice approach.
Now, I'm now joined by Victorian Liberal MP Tim Smith. Tim, what the heck is going on in the People's Republic?
Well, good evening, Cory, and good evening to all of your viewers right around Australia. Well, once again, the Andrews Labor government has totally stuffed up something that has worked perfectly well in New South Wales, South Australia, heavens above, it even works well in Queensland, which is a consistent statewide approach to QR codes where everyone understands what the rules are. The rules are enforced universally, fairly. Everyone knows, for example, that when you get off the plane at Adelaide Airport, there's the South Australian app, you download it, you check in. At every bar and cafe that I attended when I was in Adelaide a couple of weeks ago, it was pretty clear that there was one app that you used. Same in Sydney. I was in Queensland last night for a wedding. It was very, very simple. But in Victoria, it's a shambles. And mass confusion where the government is saying to people that live on their own in an apartment, you need a QR code login on the outside of your property. Well, how utterly ridiculous. Once again, Andrew's focusing on all the wrong things that won't help contact tracing and none of the right things, like the gold standard that is New South Wales.
Yeah, Tim, I have to agree with you. I think the Dan Andrews government hasn't really managed this pandemic very well. I'm critical of other state premiers too, don't get me wrong there, but it does seem that they go from one bad decision to another bad decision, and the only thing they've managed pretty well is the cover-ups of all of those terrible decisions. Who's responsible for this?
Well, these are guidelines from the Victorian government. So once again, they haven't got the basics right. I mean, contact tracing is what keeps COVID out of our community. Hotel quarantine has been monumentally stuffed up in Victoria time and time and time again, which is why we've had 3 lockdowns, including the second wave last year that cost the lives of 801 Victorians. 250,000 people lost their jobs, and last year was, frankly, a total write-off for most Victorians. But had we had a decent contact tracing system, i.e. a universal QR code system like in other states that we were promised last October, I might add, maybe we wouldn't have needed a third lockdown in February when we had yet another breach from hotel quarantine. Contact tracing, QR codes, logins, they're so important. And yet the Victorian government seems to focus on everything that doesn't stop the spread of COVID. And frankly, this very basic and important piece of technology, they still haven't rolled out, and yet they're compelling owners' corporations to have it in areas which aren't even communal. It makes no sense. It's frankly bonkers. And I just think the Victorian people are getting sick of a government that seems all at sea in managing this pandemic.
I agree with you, Tim, but I've got Sam Crosby in the man cave with me tonight, and I'm sure he's going to be struggling to disagree with anything that you say. Sam, what has Tim told us that is inaccurate?
Oh, look, it's what he hasn't told us that's the worry. And that's what Scott Morrison's doing. I mean, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong.
Don't deflect.
No, hold on. Let me deal with the substance of that.
No,
I agree.
we're talking about Daniel
Tim.
Andrews in Victoria.
Yeah, hold on 2 seconds. Hold on. Completely agree. Scanning a QR code to go into your home or your friend's home, it's big government gone crazy. Completely agree.
Right.
No argument. Okay?
Let's rule a line under that. We're all
no
in furious agreement again.
But we're now at a point where we should have been, you should be vaccinated, I should be vaccinated, Tim should be vaccinated, and we've got nowhere. We are nowhere to be seen on that. Joe Biden could go in 100 days and get 200 million doses of this vaccine up and running. Okay, sure, it's Donald Trump, he's so great, whatever. Yeah. Fine. But in 100 days, the United States could do that. And we are nowhere.
What is it with
now, at some stage, at some stage, Tim, at some stage, if I can admit that maybe the Victorian Labor government has overstepped the mark here, surely you can admit that maybe the Liberal federal party, federal government, hasn't done well enough when it comes to the quarantine centres that are non-existent and the vaccine rollout, which is non-existent.
Sam, I've got to take a break. Tim, you go. Tell me, what's your response to that firstly, and then you get the final say.
Another silly false equivalence from the left. Frankly, states, territories and the federal government are responsible for the vaccine rollout. It's going quite well, but there's no community transmission of COVID in Australia at the moment. So trying to compare the vaccine rollout in the United States, where literally thousands of people lost their lives to the disease, to Australia at the moment, where there is no one contracting it through community transmission, is a ridiculous false equivalence and a deliberate distraction from the failures of the Andrews government here in Victoria.
Yeah, Tim Smith, no one's distracting you. Thanks so much for your time tonight and keep on doing the great work you do down there.
Thanks, Cory. All the best.